You're listening to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast with Mike Chappell and Dave Griffiths.
Inside the Fox 59 CBS 4 podcast studio, welcome to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast. Alongside Matt Adams, I'm Dave Griffiths. Our Mike Chappell on the injured reserve list this week, coming off the bye week. He needs a little bit more time to get back to 100%. So we're giving him this such an uneventful week here this Thanksgiving week inside Colts headquarters, Matt. Nothing for us to break down at all.
No, as a matter of fact, this week I was like, well, just not going to have much to talk about except, maybe a little review of the Patriots game, look ahead at the Bucs game. So I just went ahead and compiled like the Colts individual offensive statistics because I'm like, well, that'll give us at least something to sort of talk about.
Yeah, you go.
And I'm like, but then I threw those out this morning.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, as you write here in our rundown, Shaq and awe, a massive roster move for the Colts as they come off a bye week after beating the Patriots in Germany. They'll host Tampa Bay this weekend at 1 o'clock, broadcast on CBS 4 Sunday afternoon if you're in central Indiana. But we have to discuss first the fact that Shaq Leonard is no longer an Indianapolis Colt. And if you've listened to our podcasts this year, the end result is not a surprising one. We've detailed that although Shaq has been somewhat productive in his role in terms of making some tackles here and there, he has not been productive in terms of making $19 million a year. You don't pay someone $19 million a year to get 8 to 10 tackles a game. And Shaq's just point was always that he wanted more time. He wanted more snaps. And for a while, at least, you could get behind that. And then, Matt, what happened in Germany really thrust him into an incredibly negative light with how he played in that game, to be perfectly honest and to be perfectly frank. We'll get into his legacy in Indianapolis shortly and dive into that, but I think it's most important to start with the present and why this happened. So it is, like I said, if you've listened to us over the past couple weeks, the end result with Shaq Leonard leaving the Indianapolis Colts for me, and I'm sure for you as well, cannot be an overly surprising one.
No, and it's tough. I mean, he's the Maniac. Fans love the guy and everything, but we've talked about it on the podcast. We just don't remember any times where he made an impactful tackle or made an impactful play. When I was compiling the team statistics in prep for the show before what happened yesterday, one thing that struck me is when you look at Shaq's stats, and I know stats don't tell you everything about everything, but when you look at Shaq's stats, it's 0 sacks, 0 forced fumbles, 0 fumbles recovery, 0 interceptions, and just 2 tackles for loss. And also his total tackle split with his solo tackle split is almost 50-50, which is well off of what he has been for his career. It's closer to a 3-to-1 season by season when you look at the rest of his stats for his career.
Yeah, he was known throughout that part of his career by having those stats, by being dominant, by taking the ball away, by getting sacks. And he said himself that his role was different in this defense, which is completely correct. But there was a table that I found online, and it was tweeted out by our old friend Zach Kiefer of The Athletic, and I'm glad I was just able to find it. But this was after the 2021 season. So after what was arguably Shaq Leonard's best season with the Indianapolis Colts, and it's the one that he was hurt the entire time.
He basically played on one leg that year.
He fought through pain every week. I don't know what he had to go through pregame every week to be ready to play, but it was an undertaking. But after that season, so his first 4 years in the NFL, after coming in 2018, he had 530 total tackles. He had 16 forced fumbles. And if you look at other linebackers that are known for taking the ball away, like Fred Warner during that time, 6 forced fumbles. Shaq had 16. He had 7 fumble recoveries. Warner, again, had 5. Levante David had 6. So Shaq, more fumble recoveries there, too, probably because he's fallen down on all those that he just punched out. 11 interceptions for Shaq Leonard during that time. You look at other linebackers that are known for their coverage skills. Roquan Smith, Tremaine Edwards had 4 during that same amount of time and had 15 sacks. A guy like Bobby Wagner had 12 sacks during that time. 30 tackles for loss for Shaq Leonard. Roquan Smith and Levante Davis were a little bit more than that with 43 and 40 with their attacking schemes. But what he did in terms of the splash plays was remarkable. He was doing them on a pace that is not. It's not an exaggeration to say we had never seen it before.
No, a historic pace.
Over his first 4 years in the NFL. It is not an exaggeration to say that he was on a Hall of Fame trajectory after his first 4 years in the NFL. And if he'd even been able to come back, and I'm not putting him aside right now because I've learned, you don't believe in Shaq
right?
Leonard, but right now he's just in a point where he obviously has to retool himself, remake himself, and go forward from that. But if you're a Colts fan out there listening to us, which you probably are, obviously, because it's Colts Blues Zone podcast, but I hope, and you should, remember those first years, not what's happened the last 2 years. And it's an unceremonious ending for easily one of the best defenders in franchise history. And I know that we've given Shaq a hard time on this podcast for several reasons. He can be difficult to deal with sometimes. Sometimes it was like, why are you so focused on all the negative things people say about you that makes no sense? Why are you snapping back at us, the media, who aren't saying these things? You're lumping us in with other people who are just on Twitter and ragging you online. So dealing with him from that perspective was difficult at times. And I think people also got a little bit tired with the shtick the last couple years when he wasn't producing on the field. But if you look back on Shaq Leonard's career, you have to remember, if you're a Colts fan, those first 4 years and what he gave to this organization. And in 2021, what he gave to the organization that you all love so much, in spite of being on one ankle and fighting through the injury week after week to have arguably his best season in the league there in 2021. It was not, it ended poorly that year for him and for the team.
So his reward was that loss at the end of the season.
Exactly. And it almost mirrors his reality in the fact that the ending here in Indianapolis is so bitter to what was up until that point easily one of the best of all time. But Shaquille Leonard, Darius Leonard, however you choose to remember him, should be one of the best Colts of all time. He is easily deserving when you look at other people in the Ring of Honor of a space up there. I think it would be easier to put him up there than it would be Andrew Luck up there because of the way that Luck's career ended here versus how Shaq's career ended here. There's some different different variables there, some different dynamics, but all that to say, I think Shaquille Leonard needs to be remembered as one of the best defenders in this franchise's history.
I mean, for 4 seasons, he was one of the top defenders, not just on the team, but in the entire NFL. And this was a guy who, time and time again, when it looked like the other team was going to do something, made something happen, whether it was punching out a ball, making an interception, especially his first couple years, getting down, getting sacks and those types of things. He was just an amazing player to watch. And so, I had the Ring of Honor thought as well when I was putting together the podcast. Is Shaq worthy of Ring of Honor? And I think 100%, if his pride will allow him to come back and accept the honor.
And that's a legitimate question. I think that there's got to be some bitterness in how this has ended, and how he feels the organization has treated him, because that's what he said the past couple weeks in the locker room, is that he's been disappointed with his role. He doesn't understand his role, and he doesn't understand why they've essentially given up on him. And he's going to get the chance to prove himself because someone's going to take him. I don't know if he'll play this year. Right now, he's cut. And he's guaranteed $6 million for the rest of this year, $6 or $7 million in that range. And he's guaranteed $7 or $8 million next year, something in that range from the Colts. And then after that, the rest of his contract is null, which was for like 2 or 3 more years here, and I think it was 2 more years after this year at least.
He signed a 5-year extension in 2021,
right?
I think.
So anyway, it was 2 or 3 more years. I can't do math that fast, but
I think he was signed through 2026.
Yeah, I think you're right. So anyway, where was I going with that? I don't remember where I was going with that.
You were talking about money, basically.
Yeah, I was talking about the money to it. And there's no way, by the time people listen to this, I think he'll have cleared waivers. I think that's how the timeline goes, assuming no one claims him. And there's no chance anybody claims him on waivers.
Because if you claim him off waivers, then you pick up the rest of that large contract that the Colts paid him. And part of the reason that part of the reason Shaq's not here anymore is because of that extension, because he's making about $20 million a year. Mm-hmm. That's not all guaranteed and all that. It's an NFL contract. But when you look at that, the team just felt like what they were getting back from that position, they could not afford to do that anymore. So there's teams that are going to do that same calculus. They're going to wait till he clears waivers and then maybe sign to a free agent deal.
There are teams that are going to be interested, absolutely, to see just to bring him in and see what he can do for the rest of this year, I think, because Shaq wants to play. I think he does. It sure seems like he wants to play. That's what he said week after week here. Now he's been on a bye, so he should be rested. Go in somewhere energetic. Like I could see him going to Chicago, reuniting with Matt Eberflus, who gave him the best years of his career as defensive coordinator. I could see him going to Philadelphia with Nick Sirianni, who knows exactly what he can do. I could see him going to Carolina and going with Frank Reich, who knows what he could do. Or he can just go somewhere else, who has proved that they know what he can bring to a team. And he'll go in there with different expectations as he had here too. I think that'll be good for him. It'll be good to have a fresh start where he didn't have the expectations of having a 4 consecutive All-Pro, and he doesn't have the contract looming over him of, hey, you make $19 million, you should be doing this and this and this every week, and you're not doing this and this and this. So ultimately, it's a fresh start for him that should benefit him. That certainly would have benefited the Colts now or after the season. And if the Colts were just going to demote him to basically being inactive or a scout team player even, because there was no sign that they were going to give him any more time. And the last game that he played was his worst game of the season. So it's best... When looking at it in that perspective, was it surprising to me that this happened right now, Matt? Yes, it was. But when you look at it in that perspective, it's understandable how it happened here in the middle of the season.
Yeah, the timing. But then you also look at the last couple of games that the Colts played, and just reading between the lines there, against Carolina, they didn't have Zaire Franklin that game. So you're like, well, that probably means they're going to play Shaq more. Well, no, they put Segun Alubi out there instead, and he played the majority of snaps. And Shaq's on the sidelines during third down. And then against New England, Shaq did play a lot. He had 9 tackles in that game, but I think only a couple of them were solo. And he had, again, I'm not trying to be too critical here, but he's talking about, I don't have the opportunity to make splash plays because I'm not out on the field enough. Well, he had 2 big opportunities to make splash plays, and he whiffed on them. He had Ezekiel Elliott dead to rights on a pass behind the line of scrimmage. Couldn't make the tackle. He had a chance to recover a fumble early in that game as well. Couldn't wrestle the fumble away. So, again, I understand limited opportunities, maybe not being able to play at the level that he's usually playing at, but there were some of your chances to make those things that you've said you can do, and then when given those chances, not able to come through on it.
He was just never able to figure out the best role for himself here in Gus Bradley's system as well. It's a completely different system than what Matt Eberflus ran here. For those of you out there who are maybe not quite familiar with all the intricacies, I'll try to shed some light on a little bit of them without getting too lost in the weeds. But Shaq under Eberflus was more of a roamer. Like, he had much more freedom to move sideline to sideline and to kind of clean up behind a defensive line that was absorbing some more offensive line blocks. Here, he's more asked under Gus Bradley to be someone that is taking on more blocks from the offensive lineman. He is not as free, which is not his game at all. Shaq Leonard weighs about 215, 220 pounds. And if you're going up against a 270, 290-pound offensive guard, that's a recipe for disaster. It really is. And it's not his game. It does not suit him. Gus Bradley's system does not suit Shaq Leonard. That is unmistakable. So I thought that even after this season, even if Shaq showed some promise near the end of this year, that it might be beneficial for him and the team to part ways anyway, because he could be better elsewhere, and the team wouldn't be paying him $19 million, even if he was going to be a decent linebacker. So it just happens early that he gets a head start, I guess, on the next step in his career right now.
I did think it would come at the end of the season, once things had concluded. I didn't think it was going to come after the bye week.
Yeah, it's obviously a this is stemming from injury for Shaq, and he had one surgery on his back, and he came back and things just weren't fixed, and then he got hit in the face on the goal line, broke his nose, had a concussion, ended up on IR, had another surgery the past off, so 2 back surgeries, trying to fix a nerve problem. The way he described it was the nerve, like the calf, wasn't firing. I believe those are the exact words that he used. I believe I heard
him say that, yes.
And for a guy that relies on explosion and sideline to sideline speed to be as good as he was, it doomed him as long as he was trying to work his way back, and he wasn't the player that he was. What was I going to say? Yeah, nerves are weird, man. Like we figured out how to fix bones. We figured out how to mend muscle tissue and connective tissue and ligaments, for the most part, really, really well. But once you mess with those nerves and they're just not firing like they used to, it shows. Like I'd love to have to talk to Will Carroll, our friend, injury expert, just to get, maybe there's some cutting edge, top of the line stuff that people are working toward right now, But it's just not there, and it's got to be frustrating for Shaq to see other people come back from injury and him not to be able to come back from injury.
It was a different injury in a different case. They always are, but that was also the same thing when Manning had his surgery. Were those nerves going to be refire? Was he going to be able to get his throwing arm in motion back and all that stuff? And for Shaq, it sort of reminded me of the same thing. They were working with nerves here, waiting them to kind of refire, get back and reintegrated, and it's does seem like he was just a step slower out there than what we were used to seeing.
Matt, what do you think about comparing Shaquille Leonard to Bob Sanders? Because I know Bob he got them the Super Bowl, so that is different, and I can't ignore that difference. But for a guy who had a short career with the team and was dynamic when he was on the field, I would say Shaq's accolades are more than Bob Sanders had. I mean, but at the same time, great defensive player for this team. I think that should be a fan favorite for the long run. That was like a thought that came to my mind. But you were here for the Bob Sanders era, so I wanted to bounce it off you and see what you thought about it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very fair comparison because Sanders was only here healthy for a few seasons, and he was Defensive Player of the Year. He helped the Colts get that Super Bowl win, but it's just kind of like, and then one day he was gone and he just could never quite stay healthy. And but had such impact on the team, but not necessarily. Bob Sanders was just the big hit guy. Not just the big hit guy, but that's what he was known for. Whereas Shaq was Mr. Takeaway.
Yeah,
and that's where the difference is because both guys could turn the game, but Shaq usually did it. And I tell you what, during that 2021 season, it seemed like almost every game when they were in a desperate situation, there was Shaq. Getting the interception, punching the ball out, getting the turnover, getting the stop. And Sanders was a lot like that too.
Mm-hmm. When you also look at Shaquille Leonard's time in Indianapolis, I'd be remiss not to mention his off the field contributions to the area as well. I mean, he gets cut this week on Tuesday, and
he's still out there handing out turkeys.
Later on Tuesday, he's right out there doing his turkey giveaway. He doesn't shy away from it. His teammates come out, help him out. A lot of other volunteers were there. He speaks to everyone in the media there in what was obviously a rough time for him, and that's one of the many things that he's done here in the area. He's been an outspoken supporter for Jim Irsay's Kicking the Stigma campaign as well, which has taken off over the past couple years, shedding light on mental illness or mental struggles that folks go through. And Shaq has been open about his own. So that you have to remember that as well. And for some people out there who've taken his words to heart in those areas, those struggles, like everything we've talked about so far is nothing compared to the impact that he's had on their life personally, because he has taken that forefront role in being a face of a movement that maybe 10, 15 years ago would have been laughed at or would have been certainly pushed to the side as something that's not important. But Shaq was not afraid to be out there, to put his face out there, to put his name out there as someone who struggled with mental not illness, but mental issues, mental depression, mental health is the word I was looking for. Thank you. So to anyone out there who's been impacted by that aspect as well, if you happen to be listening to this podcast, I'm sure if you sent him a tweet, he'll read it. First of all, he reads them, man. He finds everything, whether you say so. It's mostly people who say something bad, but right now I know that he also mentioned on Tuesday the fact that so many people had reached out to him had meant a whole lot. So if he has impacted you in that way, I'd encourage you to do so on Twitter and just reach out to him as he's about to start this new part of his career.
Well, and that's a really good point, because people love players players that play well. That's what you do for your
Obviously,
home team. But you really, really, really start loving a guy when they can have a big impact on you outside of the game. And in the community, Darius/Shaq was just so great for Indianapolis.
Well, since we wrap up our discussion on Shaquille Leonard with that, I think it is fitting that we kind of pivot into more mental health issues. Jim Irsay starting this. Jim Irsay is also in the news this week with HBO's Real Sports. Andrea Kramer coming to Indianapolis, doing a lengthy interview with Jim Irsay, and in that interview, there was quite a bit discussed, but what is certainly gaining and keeping, and understandably so, the most traction here is Jim Irsay's own story about his arrest, which was 10 years ago now. I think in 2013, 2014, when he was pulled over. He was arrested for driving erratically, and this is what was said. I'm going to read it verbatim just so I don't mess it all up. Irsay says, quote, "The arrest was wrong. I had just had hip surgery and been in the car for 45 minutes." He got a DUI, I believe, is what it was.
Yeah.
And so I forgot to add that at the beginning. So anyway, the arrest was wrong. I had just had hip surgery and been in the car for 45 minutes. And what? They asked me to walk the line? Are you kidding me? I can barely walk at all. And Kramer asked him to kind of clarify, saying that he couldn't walk because of the hip surgery and not taking painkillers. And Irsay says, "Yes, I mean, I'm not saying that. That's a fact." So Kramer asked him why she pleaded guilty. And Irsay said, "Just to get it over with. Look it, I am prejudiced against because I'm a rich white billionaire. If I'm just the average guy down the block, they're not pulling me in. Of course that." Then Andrea Kramer says, "Do you know what it's going to sound like if people hear you say they're prejudiced against a white billionaire?" Irsay says, "I don't care what it sounds like. It's the truth. I could give a damn what people think, how anything sounds like. The truth is the truth, and I know the truth." So, Jim Irsay is unable to let this arrest of 10 years ago go.
Something that, honestly, a lot of people had kind of not necessarily forgotten about, but had forgiven for and
very much so. It was very much forgiven and forgotten, I think, in the very large part of the Colts fan and Indianapolis community. But for Jim to come back and fight it, he's a man of his principles, and he doesn't back down very often. As we've said, and Chap, I would love to have his perspective on this. Unfortunately, can't have it because he's not here. We'll touch on it, I think, again next week.
I think it'll be back
to get Chap's take on this. But we'll add what we can here. To say that you are prejudiced against for being a rich white millionaire is just a strange thing to say. And I know Irsay is a strange man. And I was having a discussion with somebody this morning, and we were just going back and forth on this. Like, did he really mean prejudiced? Is that the word that he actually meant? Did he mean he was just targeted? Because I think there's a difference between those words, you know? But then we eventually came to the conclusion that it's impossible to get inside of Jim Irsay's head, and it was absolutely foolhardy to try to do so, to be perfectly honest. So you have to take him at his word about what he said. And the word that he used was he was prejudiced against. And he's kind of doubled down on it by going back and saying yes to Andrea Kramer, that was the case, and then tripled down on it by tweeting again on Wednesday, saying that if I had come back from pancreatic cancer, I'd be a hero, but because I'm struggling with mental health, then Bryant Gumbel goes all in on me, or whatever exactly it was he said on Twitter. He's so mean to me on Twitter, which, by the way, Bryant Gumbel is not the nicest man in the world, it seems like, just from watching his stuff. I'm going to throw that out there and let it marinate. But nevertheless, he also has a lot of people who are coming on his show and are trying to put their own story forward, like Jim Irsay was in this case, and the facts seem to indicate something else. So I understand how Bryant Gumbel can come across as combative, as someone who is not being very nice, because he's trying to present the side of the facts that he sees, while in this case, subject of the discussion, Jim Irsay is trying to present the facts as he sees. So all that to say, what another great load to drop on this week, to have Jim Irsay digging up the shells of an incident long since forgotten here in Indianapolis, and really doubling and tripling down on being a prejudiced against rich white billionaire. Huh, Matt?
Yeah, in the multiverse dimension somewhere, Dave, none of this happened, and we wrapped up the show after half an hour because we're trying to struggle through the Colts Colts offensive statistics for the whole season.
Right.
So, yeah. No, that's Irsay is my word. Just completely unfiltered. You just don't know what the guy is going to say. And the thing about it is he has good intentions in this interview because he is trying to talk about his mental health struggles and how addiction can be a real prison for a person, how he struggled to get out of this prison. But, the highlight quote in this is about the billionaire who's been prejudiced against by the police. And when you have a guy with such a good social conscience on top of that, it melts your brain a little bit.
The great irony of this situation is exactly what you just alluded to, that he's talking about breaking free of the prison of mental health abuses, but he can't break free of the prison of his own misconstrued notion of this arrest from 10 years ago. Because he talks about the facts. The facts were that he was driving erratically and he needed to be pulled over. And once they observed him in the condition he was in, the officers took action in the way that you think they should by the book to try to make him walk the line and he said he can't walk the line. Like, this is something that also he could have fought at the time. And also, like, this is kind of what helped him see some of these errors in his ways.
Right.
And it set him on the right path. So to have still such a bitter view of it and to keep focusing on the bitter side of it, like it really does seem like it still has him imprisoned in somewhat in this area. Now, I'm not saying Jim Irsay hasn't taken steps. He's taken many steps in the proper direction since then, like and been a great champion for mental health, especially over the past couple of years. But there's part of him, just from hearing him sound like that, still sounds like it is imprisoned by that moment.
Kind of stuck in a moment that you can't get out of a little bit there.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, it's. I remember that story, obviously, 2014, and trying to get the video of that and seeing those officers kind of holding him up because, he can't go anywhere, and they found quite a few pills in the car. He had quite a bit of cash in there. And it was just a tough situation, and you would hope. You do feel like he's rebounded stronger from it, but
100%.
Now we have some regression here on the national stage, unfortunately.
And I think this will blow over eventually, and it's not going to be something that lingers a super long time, especially as Irsay continues the Kicking the Stigma campaign. Like it just makes it, this week is just. It just adds another stupid thing to this week to have to discuss this, and really a stupid comment, to be perfectly frank, to say that you are prejudiced against because you're a rich white billionaire. It's ridiculous, the notion that is the case. Could you have been targeted in that sense? Yes, maybe you were targeted, but and like I said, I think there's a difference between those two things. But actively prejudiced against by the Carmel Police Department, who, by the way, came out and said that they were disappointed by what Jim Irsay had to say, which understandably so.
Yeah,
I would be as well if I was them. But all that to hopefully Jim lets this go, and next week we're not talking about it anymore.
We have always wondered why, because he said there were those mitigating circumstances. He'd had his hip surgery and all that stuff. Why are you, the prejudiced against billionaire with a considerable amount of money, why are you driving yourself in that situation?
There were a lot of questions. A lot of questions that he should not have been driving. He was driving in a point of being erratic, like I said. So they needed to pull him over. This was like he has really. In my view of the facts and my understanding of them, I get why he's fighting, but I just don't think he has a legal leg to stand on. I'm not a legal expert, so I guess take that with a grain of salt. But this was done like 10 years ago. That's why we're digging this back up again.
Almost a decade.
Why are we doing this? Gosh, why are we doing this?
And he's not the first person to go ahead and plead guilty to something to just get it out of the way.
Yes, I understand that, and so that's not against him and his point at all. That could certainly be the case, especially for a guy with the means that he has to be like, get this done. We're done with this.
Yeah, we can get this out of the way. We don't have to worry about it anymore, except we'll bring it up again 9 years later.
So yeah, we'll table this discussion for 9 years from now, Matt, on the 1000th edition of the Colts Blue Zone podcast, whenever we get to that. But we'll go head back to the Colts and his team. The Horseshoes eked out a win over the Patriots in one of the ugliest offensive games that you will see, save maybe that Colts-Denver game in Thursday Night Football, which was higher scoring, but all these field goals
and
here
more
and there.
exciting.
Exactly.
Somehow, even though it was a miserable football game to watch, at least it went to overtime. There was an interception, all that stuff.
It was exciting at the end, at least.
Yeah, at the end.
If not exciting during. But this was an ugly game as a Jonathan Taylor touchdown run and a horrific Mac Jones interception were the big differences, and eventually the Bailey Zappi interception at the end of the game as well. But, hey, both Colts safeties got an interception. I love safety play, so go Rodney Thomas, go Julian Blackmon. Love to see that. But that's the difference in the 10-6 win in Frankfurt. Matt, it brings up some trends, I think, or breaking some trends. Defensively, Colts played much better, but at the same time, Patriots are bad.
Yeah,
so
they've played two very bad offenses in back-to-back weeks.
But they've played also what was, in the Panthers, not a great defense and didn't do much offensively. Kenny Moore scored the points for them in that game. And then going up against the Patriots, 10 points is not good. And I could forgive the offense for struggling against the Patriots because, A, you fly overseas. That's something different. You're going up against Bill Belichick, who is always coached against you difficult. And has a decent run defense there in New England. So I understand the struggles, but 10 points is still very few. You're fortunate to come out with a win because the defense played really well, because the opposing quarterback was even worse than your quarterback was.
I mean, and they ran well. The Patriots ran well on the Colts, which is something that we have seen since Grover Stewart's been out. Just not something that you like to see. We got another bad interception from Gardner. And fortunately for the Colts, the Patriots missed the field goal. It was not a long field goal, but because that offense was so miserable, they couldn't get any closer than like a 35-yard field goal or whatever, which they then missed. They hit that field goal. Completely different complexion to the end of that game.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So you need some, I guess I'm saying they didn't play well. They got some breaks, and they managed to capitalize on it.
Yep.
That's about the best you can say.
So you take the win, and you try to fix it, fix the problems over the bye week. But if you look at things you have to fix, you have to fix the run defense, and Grover's going to be back soon. But he still has 1 or 2 more weeks where he is not back. So we just had a power surge or something here in the building. Hopefully we're still recording. That'd be ideal if we are.
Yeah,
good. Good. Fantastic.
I think we're in one of those outlets that is protected.
Okay, good. Yeah, we had the lights dimmed down for a second, but now we're back up. Fear not. Fox 59, CBS 4 will be on the air today. The Colts improved to 5-5 after the win. They're in third place still in the AFC South, right behind the Texans, and then the Jaguars 1 game ahead of them. So it's 7-3, 6-4, 5-5 right now. So very, very easy to see who's the top dog in the AFC South. And the Jaguars also you have to remember, 2 wins over the Colts this year.
It's essentially a 3-game lead for the Jags.
So I think that's going to be incredibly difficult to overcome. And even if you can keep pace with the Texans and maybe catch up to them and beat them again, because you looked really good playing them the first time this year, but boy, the Texans have looked different team, that's for sure, in every way. But playoffs are not impossible because there's a huge jumble in the middle of the AFC right now. There's a lot of teams that are 5-5 and 6-4 and in that range. And to the Colts' fortune, they're going to play some of them. Mm-hmm. They play the Raiders coming up down the stretch. They play the Bengals coming up.
Steelers.
They play the Steelers. So you have your opportunities against these teams that you are trying to pass to exert your dominance over them. And this week is a big one too, going up against the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers are 4-6 in the NFC. I mean, it's the NFC game, but still, this is one that if you want games at the end of the year to matter, this is one that you certainly want to get. This is at home. And you have not played well at home this year. You're 1-4, the Colts are, on your home field this year. They've won 1 of their last 10 games at home at Lucas Oil Stadium. What the heck is going on there? And Tampa Bay is one of those losses. I think it was. Maybe not. Maybe Tampa Bay's loss is a little bit further back. But nevertheless, yeah, I think that loss was a little bit further back. I'm sorry, spoke out of turn there. But their last meeting was 2021. That was a 38-31 loss. The Colts led 24-14 at halftime before Tom Brady and the Bucs came back and outscored them 24-7 down the stretch. There were 5 turnovers, 2 Carson Wentz interceptions. One of them was Michael Pittman just not being able to outjump 5'10" Antoine Winfield. I remember that. And a fumble, also fumbles by Zach Pascal and Nyheim Hines in this game. What I remember of that game, Matt, was the 26 straight pass plays that forced Quentin Nelson to go to Frank on the sideline, basically shake him back to his senses.
Say, hey, run the ball, guys.
We need a straight run, because some of those, obviously, as Frank described it the next week, some of those calls were RPOs. And with the way that the Buccaneers were playing, like they were stacking the box. They had one of the best run defenses in the league. They knew the Colts had one of the best run offenses in the league. So they were trying to make the passing game beat them. And this was in the second half, too, when the Colts were on top 24-14. And you're still passing the ball 26 times in a row when Shaquille Barrett is on the other side and is one of the NFL's top leading sackmen that year. And that you still continue to throw the ball. So, like, even if Carson Wentz is making the right decisions during that time because he sees that the defensive line is cracking down on the run to throw the ball, Frank Reich needs to realize that you cannot keep throwing the ball in this situation. And that, like, I always point to that as one of Frank's, one of the moments that you could see the struggles that Frank Reich had as a play caller and as a head coach. Because I think if you take a step back, if you're just a head coach and not a play caller in that scenario, you realize we need to run the ball a little bit here. We need to work the clock. We need to work this defense. They have a good rush defense, but we need to run the ball against them too, because we have a pretty good rush offense. So I need to call some of these plays. And he just got completely lost in the X's and O's and the trying to out-scheme someone that an offensive coordinator does, whereas I think if he had a play caller and he was the head coach, he would have gone up to them at like 10 or 12, be like, dude, come on, let's run the ball once or twice. But thankfully, a guy like Quentin Nelson could go up to him and be like, dude, we need to run the ball. And it eventually happened, but it eventually was not enough at the end of the day. Buccaneers, obviously a much different team than that, Matt, because different. They have Baker Mayfield's their quarterback instead of this other guy who wore number 12 down there for a couple of years, won a Super Bowl for them. But anyway, this is going to be. I think it's a big game for the Colts, even though, like I said, it's not an AFC one of these AFC teams that they're going to play later this year. It's a team in that similar vein. So if you want to be viewed as a legitimate wild card contender, this is one you certainly want to have.
You got to find ways to get some separation, and yeah, if it's head-to-head with an AFC team, yes, you can get some separation, but just win the game, even though it's an interconference game. They've got to play better at home. Like you said, 1-4 at home. They really need this one so bad.
That's got to be frustrating, though, being 1-4 at home. Out of all the things that have been frustrating this year, like that, you can't ignore that one. Obviously, losing your quarterback is number one on that list, and not being able to have Anthony Richardson playing, which, by the way, he's back in the building right now. So he's in the meetings and all that stuff. He's kind of going through some things. He's doing his rehab. But he is, now that the Colts are back from Germany, that was something that was discussed today with some players on the team, with Shane Steichen, that Anthony Richardson is back and has at least a role in the building now, for the last 7 weeks of this season. But anyway, let's get to a bit of the tail of the tape here, some offensive and defensive rankings between the Colts and the Buccaneers. Scoring, the Colts are still top 10 in the league, scoring 24 points per game, even after these last 2 weeks. And
they did break their streak.
They did. They no longer
against the Patriots.
No longer the only team in the NFL to score 20 points every week after scoring. Kenny Moore saved them 1 week.
Yes,
he kept that streak going for one more time. But you can't ask the defense and special teams to help you every week in that light. But I was talking to Joel A. Erickson of the Indy Star about this for one of our segments that we shot for Sports Overtime on Fox 59, and asked him, since the Colts are 9th, would you be more surprised if they ended up in the top 10 or if they dropped out of the top 10? He said certainly if they stayed in the top 10 throughout the rest of this year, based on the past couple weeks,
based on what we've seen.
And the reason is there's now some kind of game plan for teams to follow while facing the Gardner Minshew-led Colts. And at the beginning of the season, that wasn't quite the case. You didn't have the the amount of tape, the amount of views to see what they were trying to do. And now other teams have, and it's just stacked the box. I mean, it's make it as difficult as possible for Jonathan Taylor, which we saw last year during the Matt Ryan era, the short-lived Matt Ryan era. And
get up on those receivers. Don't give them short throws.
Nope. And that makes it tougher. And Gardner gets happy feet sometimes. He just does when the pressure is not exactly there yet. But here's my point on this. We almost got into offensive and defensive rankings, and then we got down this rabbit trail once again. My feeling about Gardner and happy feet, this has been something that I know has been discussed over the past couple weeks and people complaining about it. If the two options are him having some happy feet in the pocket and bailing a little early or committing 4 turnovers a game, I'm going to go with option A. And that is his immediate reaction to knowing something is wrong in my game. I've committed 4 turnovers in back-to-back games. I need to do something different. It's not going to be perfect in 1 week, Matt.
No,
he can't fix all the problems that he has had. And there are problems, undeniably, to commit 4 turnovers in back-to-back games. Like, the way that you stop it, like, he's going to be a little jumpy back there and want to move quicker. Boom, boom, boom. Come on, let's go. Here, I feel a little something. I got to go this way. I got to jump up that way. So I understand completely why he is doing what he is doing and being a little bit more jumpy than we have seen in the past and just not standing in the pocket and trying to take that extra second because he's not comfortable taking that extra second. He really shouldn't be right now because of those 2 back-to-back games where he had all those turnovers. The Colts have won games when he hasn't turned the ball over, even if he hasn't played all that well. So I think that, like, the jumpiness is not the worst thing in the world. It's really not. Like like I said, it takes a lot longer than 1 week to correct these mistakes. If he had a whole offseason to dissect what's wrong, then I would say, and if he started the next year and doing the same thing, I'd say that it's a problem. But he's doing this week by week, trying to improve and trying to iron out these problems just a little bit at a time, as he's preparing for another team, as he's trying to learn another defense and learn calls of where he wants his blocking to be in certain areas, what he sees in the defense. So I think there's a lot going into his mind right now. And to ask him to, A, eliminate the turnovers, and B, not be jumpy for a guy who is a backup quarterback in the NFL, I think this is a perfectly fine place for him to be.
Oh, that is an interesting point. I did happen to notice a couple of times in that Patriots game. I think what struck me was what you said is definitely understandable, but there were a couple of times where he had some super clean pockets, and if he had just waited a half a second, half a beat on these, then he probably is able to make this throw or make that throw. And instead, now he's all turned around, he's running around, he's looping around, trying to find somebody to go, and it makes it look like a panic.
Yep.
And so that's what kind of struck me is it's good to have an accelerated clock. To me, it just looks like the clock is accelerated just a little bit too much, little too quickly.
Yep. And there's a saying that you'd rather say in the NFL, you'd rather say whoa than giddy up. Like, you'd rather have a guy say, take it easy for a minute. But after Gardner, after he had 5 minutes, after he had 4 turnovers in back-to-back games, you needed to say whoa to him. Like, whoa, okay, something's wrong here. And now, like, it's kind of weird to say, like, okay, you have to, now you're trying to tell him to giddy up a little bit more. Now you're trying to say, okay, you need to wait a little bit longer and hit those throws because you want to hit Alec Pierce downfield, man. Like, that guy needs some more opportunities. You want to get Pittman down the field. You want to get Josh Downs. Like, you want to get these wide receivers involved and take some pressure off that running game and get those stacked boxes unstacked. The only way you're going to do that is if you hit some guys down the field and do that. And the only way you're going to do that eventually is for Gardner to really come back to a more suitable medium between where he was and where he is right now, and be a quarterback that can make some of those plays down the field. And that ultimately is going to determine how good this Colts offense is down the stretch, is how well Gardner can climb back to being a quarterback that is not afraid to stand in the pocket for that half a second longer and take a shot down the field. Because right now he's not quite there. But like I said, I'd rather have him be where he is than where he was.
And I probably should also give him the benefit of the doubt. He is playing the Patriots defense.
Yeah.
And that is a unit that no matter what the personnel is, no matter what you've seen on film in previous weeks or whatever, is going to give you something that maybe you're not used to seeing.
Passing yards, both of these teams are in the middle of the pack in the NFL. Bucs 14th in the league. Colts are 17th in the league, both averaging around 220, 225 yards per game. Rushing, the Colts are in real deep trouble if they can't stop the Buccaneers' rushing offense, Matt, because the Bucs are dead last in the league, rushing for just 77 yards per game, 3.1 yards per rush. That is it. So if the Colts give up 120 to this team, that's a bad sign. I mean, I know they've struggled, but you've got to be able to be better than the worst in the league.
I mean, that's been kind of an unfortunate thing we've seen the last couple of weeks is these teams that have been toward the bottom of the league in rushing have found a reignited running game because they're playing against this Colts defense.
Colts are 10th in the league, by the way, 118 rushing yards per game, averaging 4.1 yards per rush. And that number, I think, has gone down a little bit the past couple of weeks. Because, like I said, teams have discovered the blueprint for beating the Gardner Minshew-led Colts right now, and that is to stack the Bucs. Points allowed, the Bucs are top 10 in the league, 9th allowed in 20 points per game. Colts are 26th in the league, allowing nearly 25 points per game. And there have been good games, there have been bad games in the Colts 26. It just so happens that the bad games have been really bad, and the very good games, like only giving up 6 to the Patriots last week, have been very much few and far between.
The problem is the 39 against the Browns.
Yeah, exactly. They kind of offset. If you give up 39, the 6 it doesn't bring it down all that much. Let's see here. Total defensive yards. Buccaneers are 26th in the league, so they're giving up a lot of yards, but not a lot of points. It's a team that bucks up in the red zone. Colts 25th, so they're right back-to-back with one another in defensive yards giving up per game, about 360 yards per game. Pass defense, Bucs are 27th in the league, so that's a team that a lot of other teams have been able to throw against. And it's probably because teams don't rush against them too much. They are 6th in the NFL in rushing yards allowed per game, only allowing 90 yards per game, 3.7 yards per carry. Vita Vea, still there.
Still there.
Still big.
Taking up lots of space.
Still large. Still strong.
Very big man.
Still hard to run against. Colts are 18th in pass defense, 230 yards per game, 25th in rush defense, 130 yards given up per game. And that number has been going down because they keep giving up all these yards in games that Grover Stewart is not playing. Turnovers, Bucs are +6, which is a pretty good number. Yep. I believe they're top 5 in the NFL in that.
They are, yes.
They have 16 takeaways this year, only 10 turnovers in their 10 games. Colts are +1. Always better to be in plus territory than it is minus territory.
They just got there after the Patriots game.
Exactly. 16 takeaways, just like the Bucs have, but 15 turnovers themselves. So they have given the ball away a little bit too much, as I alluded to early with our Gardner Minshew discussion right there. So Bucs are led on offense by Baker Mayfield, 2,389 yards passing this year, 15 touchdowns, only 6 interceptions. Has been sacked 20 times. He also has 41 carries, averaging 3.1 yards per carry, 11 first downs in that mix. Rachaad White, their running back, only 3.3 yards per carry, 41 catches out of the backfield too, so you got to watch him there. Where they are dangerous is their outside, is their receivers, is Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, combining for 98 catches, more than 1,300 yards, 8 touchdowns, 7 of those 8 coming from Mike Williams, who's having a heck of a season, has found something really good with Baker Mayfield. And to be honest, Matt, like when you look at the Colts, I think they're the last 2 weeks, their outside corners have played better, but it's because who have they played against?
Who are you throwing to?
The Patriots and the Panthers don't exactly have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, so they're going to be thrown right back into the fire this week. And I think this is one area where like matchups in the NFL are really important, and this is a matchup that the Colts don't look good at.
It does not favor the Colts at all there. I mean, we'll get to it, when we do our game predictions, but you look at sort of the template here. Okay, yeah, you can. The Bucs are tough against the run, which means they're going to force the Colts to pass, which has been the blueprint for the Colts not being very efficient on offense in recent weeks.
Yeah, Cade Otton at tight end, 34 catches, 3 touchdowns as well. Bucs have 35 explosive plays this year. The Colts have 39, just by comparison. On defense, led by Levante David with 90 tackles. One of the better linebackers in the NFL. I mentioned his name earlier in that table I said about Shaq Leonard, a guy that attacks in the backfield quite a bit. Antoine Winfield Jr., who I also mentioned, the 5'10 guy who apparently outjumped Michael Pittman for an interception in 2021, 71 tackles this year. Linebacker Devin White had 62 tackles. Sacks, Vita Vea, 5.5 sacks for him, 8 tackles for loss. Yaya Diaby has 4 sacks, 7 tackles for loss. Yaya Diaby. That was a guy that I had mocked to the Colts in one of my drafts drafts, a guy out of Louisville. And I actually think he was an undrafted free agent. I don't think anybody took him. But there he is. Look at me. Look at me being a scout, saying that a guy can.
Hit one.
Guy has a role. A guy has a role in the NFL. 4 sacks and 7 total tackles for loss for the former Louisville Cardinal Yaya Diaby. Shaquille Barrett also has 4 sacks himself. Levante David 3 sacks and 14 tackles for loss.
I think it's 3rd in the league.
Yep, I just came to it. I'd been talking about it all day. I finally came to Matt. Matt knew this the entire time. He knew that I was going to find his note here in the rundown and be like, ha, I know this too. 14 dang tackles for loss is really freaking good.
Incredible number.
The Colts' playoff hopes are still alive. Certainly a key stretch, as we've said. It starts this week. It continues against Pittsburgh, the Texans, the Raiders, all these teams that are right around their range in the league. But yeah, this week, even though it's not the same conference, it's still a big deal. We'll have to follow Juju Brents and Ryan Kelly and Josh Downs with their injuries throughout the rest of this week.
Also, Drew Ogletree as well.
And Drew Ogletree, too.
Foot injury, I believe,
yeah,
from a couple weeks ago.
Shane Steichen was still being, for some reason, cagey when we spoke to him today just about Juju, whether he would practice. He said, we'll see. So I'm going to look that up in a second, see if any of our friends found him out there. But Ryan Kelly in concussion protocol. Someone walked up to Ryan Kelly in the locker room today. It was funny. He was like, can't talk. I'm still in protocol. And because we had forgotten, we had completely forgot. It's been 14 days since he's been back home. Yeah, so it's been forever. But anyway, him and then Josh Downs, and then we may not see what's his name, Jelani Woods this season at all. Shane Steichen said on Monday he aggravated his other hamstring during rehab. So what the heck, man? When it rains, it pours for the Colts, and this is honestly super disappointing for Jelani Woods. This is a seed your second and third years in the NFL for rookies coming in, and obviously your first year as a rookie year are so important to development and building into what you want to be long term. This just gets everything is put on pause for Jelani, a guy who showed promise his rookie year, but now just doesn't get to build on that right away with Shane Steichen.
And it shows you it must have been. I mean, we haven't heard officially from the team, but there have been reports that it was a pretty significant hamstring injury that he suffered originally back in training.
Well, for him to miss 10 weeks,
he's missed all this time, and then for him to kind of come back from that, have a setback, come back from that, have a setback, and then you've injured your other hamstring. So that's what Jelani's Woods seasons has been so far.
Yeah, just brutal. I didn't see anything yet from anybody out there talking about who is practicing or who is not. I've kind of strolled through. There we go. Nate Atkins of the Indy Star. There we go. Juju Brents and Drew Ogletree are sitting out. So no Brents out there and no Drew. Ryan Kelly is in a red no contact jersey. Josh Downs is practicing. So that's how they look right now, coming back from having a week off, which is not terrible, but would have loved to see Juju out there to see if he had a chance to play this weekend.
I put him on IR.
Exactly.
by this time, I guess, but
yep. But they can't turn back the clock, and that was obviously not the best decision.
And it could be one of those things they thought it was going to, heal a little bit faster. You can't always know these things.
Yep, we're getting Thanksgiving games with the Packers-Lions on Fox, 12:30 p.m. Thursday. Commanders-Cowboys, 4:30 p.m. 49ers-Seahawks, 10:20 p.m. The 49ers-Cowboys game broadcast on CBS 4 if you're in Central Indiana. Like I said, Packers-Lions on Fox 59 if you're in Central Indiana. The first ever Black Friday game this week, Dolphins-Jets, 3 p.m. on Friday. That's broadcast Amazon Prime Video. The Colts host the Tampa Bay Buccaneers Sunday at 1 o'clock on CBS 4. Let's look up and see exactly what the line is for this game, because I think I saw the Colts are favored. I thought it was like a 2-point line. Let's see, Colts-Bucs line, blah, 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 right at my fingertips. Here we go, blah, 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 opening it up. Here we go, this website. And my phone is loading, and we're looking down here, and we are finding out that the spread is, the Colts are 1.5-point favorites, according to DraftKings, and the point total is 42.5. So we're expecting something along the lines of a 22-20 ball game, according to Vegas at least, and there's a reason that those gentlemen have gold-paved ceilings. So anyway, Matt, why don't you share your thoughts about this game first, and then I'll go second.
All right. I mean, I have some pretty big concerns about this week, mostly because the Colts coming off their bye week. Sometimes teams don't always respond great to that. The Bucs with kind of this, just on paper, the template of they've got the good rushing defense that's going to be forcing the Colts to pass, which in the past couple of weeks hadn't been great for the team. But they've only won one game at home, and that's also not in the Colts' favor. I'm going to go ahead and go and say 2017. I'm going to go with the Colts in this one.
Hey, go take the home team. I'm not going to take the home team because I understand wanting to take the Colts now, and I think that they are a better team, honestly, than the Buccaneers. But I think some of your reasoning is certainly sound. That you get most teams get a boost coming back from a bye week, but you just cut Shaquille Leonard. So I think that completely takes the boost away. I think that deflates the locker room.
Kind of deflates you a little bit.
Like, you could work your way back up, but then it doesn't give you the boost of returning back from the bye and being re-energized and all that stuff for the home stretch. So I think that's, at best for them, is a wash. I think the matchups are terrible.
They are.
Because the Colts are trying. You got to run the ball, and it's tough to run against the Buccaneers. You have to defend Mike Evans and Chris Godwin.
The outside wide receiver play terrifies
it's just, me. Like I said, absolutely, like, dreadful matchups in this game. And basketball is so much more prone to matchups, I think, as just comparing the two sports. I'm not going to get too much into that, but football can be as well. And you also find out about coaches during this time coming off of bye weeks. Like, some coaches like Andy Reid are really freaking good coming off bye weeks. And they have a record in his career is something stupid. I think he has only 2 or 3 losses coming off a bye week in his entire career, which is a long career between both the Eagles and the Chiefs. So what is Shane Steichen out of the bye week? We don't know. Does he provide anything special? Were these weeks beneficial to him and to the coaching staff? Did he figure some things out that he thinks can work the passing game back into working order, or can be unique for this running game while the passing game works its way back to working order? Did Gardner Minshew get a little bit more stable, some stability under him? Did he release for a little bit, for lack of a better word, and calm down, and so he could take the next steps in trying to lead this offense down the stretch? So it's hard for me to say who the Colts are going to be, but I do know who the Buccaneers are, and I think that they match up better against the Colts. So I'm going to say 24-13. If you can't run, and we haven't seen them be able to take anything down the field, I just don't have much faith in the Colts offense right now until they show it to me.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely.
And once they do, fantastic. But right now, I just don't have a lot of faith in their offense. So that's how I feel. I think the Buccaneers take this one. It's another loss at home, and then you gear up for a couple road games after that against the
which
the
they'll
Bengals
win,
and the
right?
Titans.
Because,
yeah, exactly.
Because they're terrific.
Because they're on the road. And then you go up and face Jake Browning in Cincinnati. My goodness. Now there's a winnable game. Oh, my goodness, too, for the Colts. And the Titans are just snowballing to who knows where right now. So those are 2 winnable games, I think, of the future. But I don't know if this one's going to be it is winnable, but I don't know if it is a win.
It's winnable. I'm kind of picking them a little homerism this week.
Of course. There's nothing wrong with that. You can do that. That's cool. We want to be honest here on the Colts Blue Zone podcast, let you know about what's going on. And Mike Chappell, he'll be back next week. That's the plan, at least right now. You can read all his work online at fox59.com, cbs4indy.com. Follow him on Twitter as well, at mchappell51. Matt Adams, thank you for being here as well, at Statomatty. I'm Dave G_sports. Dave Griffiths here, hosting the Colts Blue Zone podcast. We appreciate you listening, and we'll see you next week.